Quick first impressions video of the SONY a9III, the world's first mirrorless, photo style camera with a global shutter sensor. In a nutshell, this is the best camera Sony has ever made. The grip and ergonomics overall, it's got an indent here now, are the best that Sony's ever put in a camera. It's got the best screen on the market that flips up and out. That's just fantastic. Very large, bright viewfinder, very good. I think it's 9 point something dots, really good. 2 control dials on the top, like that. And an excellent control layout. There's a dial here, there's 2 dials here, and a fourth here. What more could you ask for? They've even kind of changed the orange metal part of the lens mount here, so you can barely see the orange when a lens is mounted. I actually like the orange now, whereas before I thought it was hideous. Just that little hint of orange is kind of neat now. Overall, this camera lives up to the promise that the global shutter sensor gives. It shoots super fast. The autofocus is super accurate. I don't own a Sony a7R5, but I got to test that camera next to this one at a demo days at the Austin Camera Exchange here in Austin, Texas. And this is a much snappier camera. The autofocus and just kind of the overall operation of this thing is way faster, noticeably faster. I was surprised because the a7R5 is a pretty fast camera as it is. And then in video, there is sort of a cinematic quality to this sensor. When you pan, it does something a little bit differently. Maybe it's just the lack of rolling shutter, I don't know. Maybe it's because we're used to global shutter sensor cameras in red cinema cameras, but it has a very nice look to it, a feel to it, which is really cool. So, just a beast of a camera. But of course, there's always a few things I don't like. The Sony user experience is what it is. It's got a joystick. The menus are Sony menus. If you get used to them, they're fine. They're not great. There's some things you can't customize. There's some weird things you can't do on Sony cameras that you should be able to do, mostly for photography. You can look at my other videos, or basically any video about a Sony camera that's in depth that will cover those things. But like one example is you can't change the distance scale from meters to feet for some reason. Like how many lines of code would that take to change? Also Sony color science, I just don't like it. They have improved it, that is for sure. People don't look like green lizards anymore. I'll give them that. Now they're kind of orangey, like trolls maybe. I feel like Sony is still a generation or two away from having really good colors to compete with like Canon or Nikon, if that's your bag, or maybe even Leica. That also is kind of a little bit of a deal breaker for me on this camera. Of course, it can be fixed in post, but it just creates more work, and some of the tones and nuances, you got to be in the tone curve and stuff, and that's just a lot of work. But really, the two things I don't like about this actually boil down to the sensor. First, the dynamic range is more like an APS-C, like a Fuji camera. It's just not as wide, so you have to sort of control for that or not shoot in very low light. For me, that's kind of a big deal. I like to shoot at night. I'm not really a sports shooter. I'm trying to do portraiture and fine art and things like that. So this camera really isn't for me. I just really wanted to try the global shutter, which brings me to the second thing I don't like. I do a lot of sort of pushing electronic digital cameras to do neat things for my art. And the global shutter sensor is like too good now. The readout is too fast. So like if you go to do, light drags and stuff like that, you don't get this like pattern that you do from a slower reading sensor. It's just one smooth line. So, maybe that's an argument that this is a tool that could create different results, but for me, it just kind of ended up in an overexposed image and not the results I wanted. That's sort of an interesting thing. Like, will global shutter cameras change the way that like abstract and conceptual digital photography is done? Will we go back to using older cameras? Like for me, a lot of the reason I actually use medium format digital cameras is because the sensor readout is slower, so I get different aesthetic results from using those cameras with those sensors that I do from, say, a full frame camera or a smaller sensor camera. So in a lot of ways, this is kind of like shooting an APS-C, at least in those two sort of use cases. You know, the low light, high dynamic range, or like high low, very bright, very dark, dynamic range needed scene. And then also in things where you actually want to take advantage of a slower readout speed and sort of do aesthetic things with that slower readout speed. In a nutshell, if you're a sports shooter, you don't care about high resolution or low light photography, this is the best Sony camera on the market, irrespective of price. I know it's expensive. But if not, I say maybe you wait for the A7R6. Hopefully it would have this same body layout with this better grip and improved overall ergonomics. And I mean, the A7R5 had this screen, so hopefully just keep that, maybe improve the resolution, make it look more like a Canon, Nikon, or Leica back screen, just saying. But, to pay $6,000 for this, I don't know. You might be better off even getting a used A1, and waiting out for an A7R6 or an A1 II than buying this if you need that resolution and you're kind of doing more artsy things and you don't need the high speed. But so far, having a lot of fun with this. Still going to test it out. Maybe make some more videos on it. We'll see. Like I said, for a lot of my use cases, so far it hasn't really worked. So I'll keep trying, but if it doesn't, this may go back sooner or later. We'll see, even though it is a sweet camera. So what are your thoughts? Have you tried the A9 III? Did you try to use it for artistic purposes and have some challenges? There's no question it's the speed demon of a camera. It's probably the fastest camera on the market. We'll see when the R1 comes out, but right now, to me, this is the #1 sports, journalism news shooter on the market. So have you used it for that use case? Let me know in the comments below. All right. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.